Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on Treasure Coast Solutions. Every Wednesday, we talk about things that affect you in your daily lives, things that happen here in Stuart that may impact you, or things that happen nationally or internationally that may impact you. Some of the things that are taking place in DC, and some of the things that aren't taking place in DC. But just a general discussion of some of the things that we noted. It's not a political show or a financial planning show. We try to do, kind of try to keep with mostly economic stuff, although I say that all the time and then I lie because we always do something that has something to do with politics. And this morning I was going to do a little bit I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a lot of stuff going on in the world, so I don't, and I know everybody else does. So I never have time to actually look at things sometimes. And so I rely on guys like Mike to give me the news and give me updates, and other people to provide me with information. But from time to time, I like to get it from the source if I can. It's always nice to hear it directly, even though, and so that sometimes you can form your own opinion or whatever. So I did finally get in and actually read the 5 pages of the transcripts from the Ukrainian call. And so that I've got that up this morning. I thought maybe I would read it for those of you that didn't have time to read it. Maybe you can see, and then a lot of people are telling you how to think. You can read it, see how you want to think. But so I thought we'd do that this morning. I also want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening financially that I think will have an impact on people. One of the issues that is near and dear to my heart is the whole financing situation, which many of you know from previous shows. I've indicated that from an economic standpoint, an economy standpoint, and an economic standpoint, I think that the thing that's going to potentially blow a hole in the recovery, which is pretty strong now. I guess you can't call it a recovery at this point. You just really got to call it an expansion of the economy. But I think what's going on with it at this point is the issue I see is that there's really a lack of financing like we've had, or access to capital like we've had in the old days. And so as a result of that, there's a little bit of I think there's a little bit of a drag on the economy. And I think that's going to get worse, particularly as it relates to some regulations that affect how a property is appraised and what has to be done from an appraisal standpoint. Particularly commercial properties, because that tends to hold back the economy even a little bit more than residential. But it's both of those things. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But in general, first of all, before we get into that, I'll just mention a couple things. One, my name is Mark Breckbill. I'm a CPA. I'm for anybody that cares, I'm a licensed community association manager, which is good for my Monday show on condos, but maybe doesn't do a whole lot for you today. And also an ex-banker. I used to start banks and dealt with I was a CFO of a major bank, a $500 million bank, and so I had some experience in the financial realm, which has helped me out a lot. And of course, my education background is in accounting and finance and economics, that type of thing. So that's my background. From a show standpoint, we do welcome calls and questions and conversation. 220-9788 is the number in the studio. That's also 220-WSTU. If you like the letters better than the numbers. I'm a numbers guy, so I'll go with the 9788. You can go with the WSTU. But I did want to just throw that out there. We do welcome any kind of conversation or calls. We just ask that you keep it civil, because Mike is actually pretty much of an athlete. He's
okay.
He's
I've never been called that before.
No, you do look like it. You look like you look
I've
like
been called a mathlete.
Oh, well, yeah, no, you look like you have had some athlete in you at some point. You've pretty much choked it out by now, but
Yeah.
but you look pretty good. But he's not real quick. He's not so. You got to keep it clean because we don't want to make Mike have to work real hard on that delay. So, yeah, we for Mike to do it, we have to have a 10 or 15-second delay. So but anyway, we do welcome calls. Mike will take your call, and we just ask that you keep it civil. And the other thing, a couple other things I'll say is one, we don't reflect the views or opinions of WSTU. We could care less what they think, but we do. Even when Mike comments, it's his comments. He doesn't represent WSTU, so I just want to make sure everybody doesn't get confused. And the second thing is to say that there is no right answer necessarily. So everybody's entitled to their own opinion. The good thing about economics and finance is that it usually has an outcome. So even if you've got an opinion, it's probably you're not necessarily going to get that result because economics tends to produce a result a lot of times that is not necessarily what we would want, but it does produce a result. The interesting thing about the whole thing with finance and economics is that sometimes the process isn't from A to B. And that's what confuses people a lot of times about the economic process is people look at parts of the economic process and try to draw a snapshot and then look at it and don't really they really don't see what the outcome really is. They see what the short-term result is, but maybe not the long-term outcome. And that's because in general, in a capitalistic system, it takes a while for an item, for the market to react to a certain situation. And it could be, and that can be a long process. It could be a year. Markets get out of whack and then they adapt. And so in the short run, you might get results that are not, maybe are what you want or what you think you wanted, but in the long run, the markets react and things happen and everything changes. So it's kind of interesting. We've seen that in a number of areas, and it's always surprising to me that when particularly Congress and the president, they do something, and it gets a result, and then people are surprised or not surprised, but then down the road something else happens, and bingo. Like for example, the whole concept of the stock market right now. The stock market is doing really well. But that doesn't necessarily mean the economy is doing really well, because frankly, the companies that make up the stock market don't necessarily make up the economy, the largest portion of the economy. That's small business is still the major producer of jobs and the major producer of most of the wealth in the United States. And so, as a result, the stock market can bounce all over the place. It's kind of an indication of because there's been such a huge disconnect between stock prices and their underlying earnings projections. There's more and more participation by individuals, more and more participation by large funds who are investing to diversify, sometimes not necessarily based on a particular company's results, but rather what sector that company is in and what sector they want to be in, and whether they're over covered in that sector. So as a result, you'll see investors, which are primarily these large mutual funds, and those large mutual funds are owned by primarily individuals through their IRAs and others, which is kind of interesting because the the problem is many of you may have IRAs. You may have something of some sort of and in your IRA, or you may have a retirement account. You may have a 401k through your business or whatever, where you're able to move money around. And it's interesting because I would be willing to bet that when you buy an individual stock, I mean, when you buy an individual a mutual fund of some kind, you probably first of all don't look at all of the things that make up or could make up that mutual fund. And that's another thing that's interesting about a mutual fund is that you have to look at the mutual fund's prospectus, because what they own now is not necessarily what they will own a month from now, 6 months from now, or whatever. They have a lot of latitude to move around based on their perception of risk and the economy. So from time to time, you'll see a lot of diversity in what a mutual fund actually does versus what the name on the mutual fund says. And that's important because a lot of people, and this is a little financial planning, I said we wouldn't get into it, but a lot of people think that, well, I'm going to diversify by buying these different mutual funds, and maybe on face those mutual funds might even be different. Maybe maybe there's some value funds and some things like that. But what you have to look at is what they hold versus what those other mutual funds you're buying in hold. Because many times, even though they say that they're one or the other, maybe they're a longer term, shorter term, they have the ability to shorten or lengthen their maturities and durations based on their perception of where the market is. So if, for example, you've got a long-term bond fund, and that long-term bond fund you would think, would be invested heavily in 10-year treasury securities or notes or whatever that would be long-term in nature. But if that fund manager thinks that cyclically that there's a shorter term horizon for a period of time that's going to produce a higher yield than locking into a lower interest rate for a longer yield, most of them have the ability to substantially reduce the overall duration or maturity of their portfolio. So you may be buying an intermediate bond fund that has almost the same mix and term as a long-term bond fund. It's the same thing with corporate versus government bonds and things like that. Even a government bond fund has the ability to buy certain other things. They have the ability to take certain actions like hedging portfolios and doing things like that. So it's very important. A lot of people think that they're diversifying something and they're really not. So it's important to understand the underlying issues. But what I was getting at in that is that the other thing that happens is that most people never vote. They never, either they don't own the securities themselves, so the brokerage firm is the one that's voting on their behalf, or even if they do, they never sign off on the proxies, and they never sign off on any of that stuff. Or if they do, they sign off on proxies. They're not paying attention to the underlying company, how it's being run, what it's doing, or anything else. They're leaving that up to someone else to do. And that is fine, but it results sometimes in the market making moves that aren't consistent with the underlying economy. And it results sometimes in, the markets fall in love with certain types of sectors at certain times. For years, the market has been in love with the social media market, the Amazon market, all the internet type services. Whereas in the beginning of those stages, they were still enamored by all that, and people bought all this, and they were just large marketing companies. They didn't sell anything. They didn't produce anything. They had no solid source of income, and they were selling for huge multiples of earnings that would never have been justified if they had advertised, if they would say, hey, we're a marketing firm. We're a marketing firm, so we're going to sell for $1 billion. There was never a marketing company, just a marketing company that has ever sold for or has ever been valued as large as an Amazon or a Google or anybody like that. So it's kind of interesting. We look at some of these things and we see, oh, the stock market's up or the stock market's down. Well, what's more important is what's happening with local business. Are they hiring people? And what are their problems? Because it's the small business that's going to be the one that is going to push the recovery further or the expansion further or cause its contraction. And there are some problems in the economy right now. One significant problem is that businesses can't get jobs, can't get employees. They've got work, but they can't get employees. In certain trades like the electrical trades, the plumbing trades, the air conditioning business, it's all of these kind of things, carpentry. It's very difficult to find people with the economy coming back. It's very difficult to find people that have experience in that type of thing. And if you think about it for a minute, that makes sense. We went through a period of time that was, it's really been in excess of 10 years since the last since the crash. So think about it for a minute. If you were 50 when that crash hit, you probably couldn't afford to go 10 years looking for a job or 15 years looking for a job, although some people tried, but you couldn't go that long. So they've changed careers. They're not going back to what they did. They've already gotten out of that business and they've found another job. So, and even if they had those trade skills, they're rusty now. They haven't done it for a while and they're a lot older. They're 60 now or 62. They don't want to do that labor. That at 50, it was probably difficult work. It's hard work being in the construction trades. So they've made changes. The guys that were in their 20s, coming out of high school and they're at 18, 19 and, and then going and looking at what they were doing, many of them did not go into the trades. They might have in the past gone into the trades. They might have become plumbers or electricians. There was no jobs. Who was going to hire them to do that when there was nobody out there to even train them? So they began looking at other things. Many of them went into the medical field because the Affordable Care Act offered a number of jobs. So there were people that shifted industry. And no, they didn't go from selling life insurance to selling health insurance to selling car insurance. That they didn't do that. But many of them went to something completely different because they needed a different career. And it's interesting that in my dad's day, and I'm 64, so my dad's deceased now, but in his day, if you had more than 3 jobs in a lifetime, you were considered unstable. You just moved around a lot. One of those jobs was probably the military, so it was kind of a situation where you were, you job hopped if you had 3 jobs. And then in my generation, it wasn't unusual to have not only 5, 6, 7 different jobs, but maybe even a different career, and have a completely different career. So in my situation, for example, I actually have had probably 3 different careers in my life. I was a CPA with a big CPA firm. I went into banking. I was a banker for a number of years. I left banking, actually did some mortgage brokerage work for a while, and then left that business and went into CPA business again. And that wasn't that unusual by that time. And nowadays, the younger people today, they're probably going to have probably 5 or 6 different careers in their lives, completely different careers. Some of those will run parallel. Some of those careers, they'll be doing 2 things. They'll have 2 jobs at the same time that are completely different types of jobs. I know Mike knows somebody like that that does that, right, Mike?
Somebody, yeah.
Yeah, somebody. So it's kind of, so that's what's happened to a large degree to the economy. And so it's those small business jobs. So that's one of the problems we've got with this recovery or this expansion is there's nobody to do it. The second thing we've got is we're going to have more sellers than buyers potentially, because a lot of the people that do have these businesses right now that are plumbers and air conditioning people and electricians and contractors and everything else, they've gone through a period of time where they have lost a lot of money. Many of them may have lost everything and started over again, but they have lost a lot of money. They're now starting to accumulate some of that wealth back, but they're realizing that at their age, which again, many of them are around my age now, in their late 50s, early 60s, they're starting to realize that at their age, maybe they need to bank that. They can't afford to have another recession. So many of them are looking at their business, and it's not easy. Remember, we talked about the fact that on Wall Street, you can't reduce your return to your investors without losing those investors, because they have the ability to just go into another industry, go into another stock or whatever else almost instantaneously. In small business, that's not the case. You can put the screws to the small business owner. You really can, because they can't go anywhere. They have to ride it out. But at some point, in the long run, they have the ability to make the same decision that the Wall Street companies have the ability to make, or the owners of Wall Street companies have the ability to make instantaneously, and that is to sell or to buy. But in the long run, selling is still an option. It just takes a long time to get there. And so right now, many of those guys are starting to look at selling because they don't want. And what have we talked about on this show? If there's more sellers than buyers, what's going to happen to price? Price is going to come down. So they're not going to get the money for their businesses that they had hoped, especially if they don't have a workforce in place or the workforce they need. So they need to expand. They don't have the workforce to expand. Many of them are looking at, well, I'm going to have to sell. If that happens, it's going to cause a strain, because businesses are going to consolidate. Some jobs will be lost, or in certain things, people will stop working completely and get out of the industries. Those industries will not be the same as they are now. So there'll be a lot of things that will take place. So that's one of the big things I'm worried about right now with the economy, is that there is no workforce. We forced everybody out to college because that was the place. And frankly, that's where a lot of people went. If you were 18 years old and you had no desire to go to college, but there's no jobs, so you can go to college, you can get it paid for, at least you think you can, and you go out and you get an education. An education is something you're never going to use because you don't ever intend to do it. But that's what happened. So we have a large group of educated workers who have no intention of doing what they were educated to do. That's a problem. That means we've got significant training costs that are going to have to be duplicated for those people to get jobs they really want to do. And then also, we have made those jobs very expensive because we've already loaded that employee down with a significant amount of student loan debt that they now have to pay, even though they're not going to do anything that they intended to do with that degree. It was really a way for the government to subsidize the younger people, the younger population, so that they wouldn't be sitting out there unemployed. I mean, that's really what it amounted to. If you were in college, you weren't unemployed, so you weren't part of the unemployment statistics. But if you were in college getting a degree in something you never intended to do, or that there were no jobs for anyway, aren't you really unemployed? I mean, that's really what happened, right? So we have now a number of unemployed people. We've got a number of people who are doing things they never intended to do at way, way less price than they had hoped to do it. And because they're stuck, they have this debt that they have to pay. And so, to some degree, I'm not in favor of paying for college education for everybody because it forces people into something that they don't want to do. A lot of people move where the opportunity. If you create a free something, people will use it even if they don't want it or need it. That's just a fact of life. People will find a way. If it's free, they'll figure, what the heck? Maybe I should. And there probably were a small portion of the people that went off to college that said, "Hey, I didn't ever think I wanted to do this. I didn't think college was for me. It was great." But there's a large group of people that now have high debt from college, and yet they're not doing what they went to college to do, and or that what they went for college to do has changed so much that there's no opportunity. Their college didn't do them any good. I'll give you a good example. Take the tech world into all of the tech services. A lot of that business now, the computer guys that we used to always get. Remember the computer guy? All the computer guys, they now are all of that stuff is certificate based. They get certifications in Microsoft, certifications in Citrix or whatever the stuff is. They get certifications. They get certifications in security. They get certifications in everything. And it's the certification that counts because that tells the employer this person has this skill. And at least it's good for a period of time. And those certificates have to be renewed so that you can't have a certificate from 15 years ago and say, "Hey, see, I got a certificate in this." Nope, that doesn't do it. It may tell the employer that you've got the ability to go back and get the certificate again, but they're not going to pay you as if you already got the certificate. So now we've got a lot of people in the technology industries who have no college degree, or we've got a dichotomy. They've got a college degree that really isn't worth anything in their industry because they still have to go out and get the certifications. So they're now competing against people for jobs who already have those certifications. And it's put them at a disadvantage because they went to college and they've got a huge amount of debt and they have to make a certain amount of money to pay that debt. So I'm not in favor of giving free stuff to people because people, when they get free stuff, tend to not value it, first of all, overuse it when they don't need it, and when we waste a lot of money. But the other side of that is there ought to be a way out. The fact that the government can say you cannot bankrupt out of student loan debt is wrong. They forced you into it, lent you the money, and now they're saying to you, "Sorry, you were stupid enough to do what we said, so now it's your problem." And that's a problem. I mean, that's not right. Now, I know that was abused in the old days, but it used to be that every attorney went to, they went to undergraduate, they went to, they went and got their degree, went to law school, got their law degree, and the first practice that they did was to file some sort of an action to get rid of their student loan debt so that they didn't have any debt anymore. And you could do that. And so that got abused. But that just because something gets abused, here the government, well, we've got to step in and take over. It was all these private companies that were abusing these people. So we're going to step in and take over, and we'll then make it so that we'll settle it because you can't get out of paying the government back. Well, that's wrong. And the funny thing is, if it's subsidized, you're going to play the government twice because there's people that borrowed money to go to college, and they're going to pay that college off because the government won't let them out of it. And then they're going to tax them on the income that they're making from the job trying to pay their debt off. They're going to tax them for somebody else to go free. Doesn't make sense. Okay, that just doesn't make sense. That is not the free market operating. That is the government dictating an allocation of resources, allocating money into college education that not everybody needs, nor does everybody want. So we've got that kind of situation going on, and that's a problem. It's the same, we got the same issue to some degree with healthcare, a large degree, particularly with what's proposed. It's funny because none of us like the idea that we want to be forced into certain types of healthcare. And healthcare procedures. So we all like the idea that if we have something wrong, we can get it, even if we have to pay a lot of money for it. And most of us are probably from a purely uh, what is it? I was trying not to use a political term, libertarian, but from a purely uh, fairness standpoint, we don't have a problem with the fact that some people have money and can afford things and others can't. When we're in that situation, it's very difficult. But um, I'm 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 happy with the fact that if there's certain things I can't afford, I just can't afford it. And that's my problem. I should have done something different. I could have done something different. Maybe I should have had some other opportunity, but it doesn't mean just because I can't afford it that I should be given it. I'm also not, I don't have a problem with the fact that if somebody worked hard, made a lot of money, and was successful, that they can afford things I can't afford. Just because they've got a jet doesn't mean that you need to give me a jet. See, and if we start talking in terms like that, it starts making more sense. In economic things, we start talking about things that are life and death, so to speak. Now then all of a sudden they become inalienable rights that we're all entitled to health insurance. Well, no, we're not. We weren't in the day. We had people in the day that worked out on the farms. They couldn't even get to a doctor. Um, and did they die? Yes. And was their job, would it have been better to be someplace else and be a robber baron and make an Yeah, it would have been. That doesn't mean that because I don't have it, that I'm entitled to it. I have an opportunity to try to get it. There are certain things that, but whatever happens, it is going to be rationed. The fact that I might, let's say, if we start allocating resources, which we would be doing in a healthcare situation, if there's no competition, then somebody's going to make that same decision. It's just not me. I at least have some opportunity. If I wanted to mortgage my house to have a certain procedure done, I have the right to mortgage my house, even if it means I go broke. All right. But I don't want a situation where somebody says, you know what? You're 64 years old. We're not going to do that. We're not going to pay for that surgery. We're not going to pay for that PET scan. We're not going to pay for this or that because you're too old for that. I mean, we'll just wait and see what happens. And that's what's going to happen, because when you allocate a certain amount of limited resources, and I don't care how big the number is, it's bigger than the amount of resources we have. When you're talking about healthcare for all, I don't care if it's 2 trillion, if it's 50 trillion, if it's, people don't even understand the word trillion. It's like the Saturday Night Live skit. Did you see that, Mike? Saturday Night skit.
Which one?
The one on Elizabeth Warren, where she's doing that. She's showing the chart, and then she says, she says that they have it's supposed to be her, of course, and then she's saying, and it's when you get into these kind of numbers, they're not even real anyway. Nobody, they're not even real anyway.
Yeah.
The first thing she says is, we're going to have to cut government spending, so this is dead right now. So, but anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, it's one of those kind of things where whatever you're looking at, somebody is going to have. You cannot have everything. There's just no way. Everybody can't have everything. You have to define healthcare. See, they're not defining healthcare. They're making it seem like healthcare is everything possible that you might need. Your dental, vision, long-term care, basic health insurance, cancer surgery, heart replacements, kidney replacements, eye replacements, cornea replacements. Everything is included. Everything. Because healthcare is in the mind of the beholder. So when they use the term healthcare, what pops to your mind? Well, for somebody who's in their 60s, maybe it's long-term care. Wow, I've got the ability to have long-term care. Somebody's going to be able to take care of me when I'm sick and old. For others, it's, man, finally I can get my dental work done, or I can get my eyes done. Or for others, it's, yeah, finally I can get some cosmetic surgery. I hate the way I look. I want to look differently. And but nobody's defining what healthcare is, because if you define healthcare, it immediately means that you're going to ration, and nobody wants to talk about rationing. You don't hear Elizabeth Warren or you don't hear Bernie Sanders saying, here's what we're offering. We're offering health care, but it doesn't include this. It doesn't include this. It doesn't include this. You can't have it if you're over 85. You can't do this if you're, these procedures we're not going to give you if you're 90. These procedures we're not going to give you if you're 85. These procedures we're not giving you if you're 65. Anything that's remotely considered to be experimental that could possibly save your life, we're not paying for because it's experimental. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. That's what's going to happen, though. That's what's got to happen. There's got to be an allocation of resources. I'll give you a good example. I have a cyst on my arm. I have a cyst on but it makes it look like I got two elbows. It's kind of funny. But anyway, I got this cyst. So I've had it for 25 or 30 years, 25 years. I went into the doctor right away when I got it because I was worried that it was cancer or something that's going to kill me. And they told me, nope, it's a sebaceous cyst. That's what it is. But you'll have to have surgery to have it done because of where they call it the seed or whatever it is done. We can't get it out without doing some surgery. So I thought, oh, okay. So over the 30 years, I've had to have, I had to have some things done on it, minor, but I've lived with it, and I continue to live with it. Why? Because I don't want to spend $2,000 or $3,000 of my own money to have something that I think is cosmetic. And I don't care that everybody else thinks it's ugly. I don't care. I'm not paying for it. I made that decision. Now, give me free health care. Tomorrow, I'm scheduling an appointment to get rid of that because why not? It's free, right? I'm not going to allocate my own resources if I don't have to. So if I'm eligible for that, I'm getting it done. But if I'm 90 years old, 95 years old, and I want to have a hip replacement, then, somebody might say, well, we're not going to put a new hip in you that's going to last until you're 97. Your life expectancy is 2 years. The life expectancy of this product is 15 years. So therefore you don't meet the life expectancy. So we're not doing it. And think about that. That is what's going to happen. That's the kind of thing that's going to happen. It's got to, because we can't possibly give everything everybody not only needs, but wants. And who's going to define what's a want and what's a need? If I'm in a situation where it's really important that I not have two elbows, then I need to have that surgery done. And so the government can't say, well, it's cosmetic. You can't have that done. If I have some serious, issues, let's say, as a woman, I end up having breast cancer and, a mastectomy, and I need to have some, breast reconstruction surgery or whatever. So the government going to say, well, that really doesn't affect your health. It's really your appearance. So we're not going to pay for that. Well, yes, it does affect my health. It affects my mental health. So it's one of those kind of things. Who's going to make those decisions? That's the issue. And so, there's kind of those kind of things. And then, so I promised I was going to read this memo. So I'm going to read this real quick because it's kind of interesting. This is the call. This is the telephone conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine with President Trump. And the note takers were the White House Situation Room. That's how it's set up here. It's a memorandum of the telephone conversation. So it's not dictation. It's a memorandum. And the date was July 25th from 9:03 to 9:33 Eastern time. And it took place at the residence. Okay. So President Trump, congratulations on a great victory. We all watched from the United States and you did a terrific job. The way you came from behind, somebody who wasn't given much of a chance, and you ended up winning easily. It's a fantastic achievement. Congratulations. Zelensky, you are absolutely right, Mr. President. We did win big, and we worked hard for this. We worked a lot, but I would like to confess to you that I had an opportunity to learn from you. We used quite a few of your skills and knowledge, and were able to use it as an example for our election. And yes, it is true that these were unique elections. We were in a unique situation that we were able to achieve a unique success. I'm unable to tell you the following. The first time you called me to congratulate me when I won my presidential election, and the second time you are now calling me when my party won the parliamentary election. I think I should run more often so you can call me more often and we can talk over the phone more often. There is a little thing here that says, A memorandum of a telephone conversation is not a verbatim transcript of a discussion. The text in this document records the notes and recollections of the Situation Room duty officers and NSC policy staff assigned to listen and memorialize the conversation in written form as the conversation takes place. A number of factors can affect the accuracy of the record, including poor telecommunications connections and variations in accent and or interpretation. The word inaudible is used to indicate portions of a conversation that the note taker was unable to hear. There's nothing says inaudible in here, so that there wasn't any of that. Okay, so he has said, I think I should run more often so you can call me more often and we can talk over the phone more often. The president, laughter. That's a very good idea. I think your country is very happy about that. Zelensky, well, yes, to tell you the truth, we are trying to work hard because we wanted to drain the swamp here in our country. We brought in many, many new people, not the old politicians, not the typical politicians, because we want to have a new format and a new type of government. You are a great teacher for us in that. The president, well, it's very nice of you to say that. I will say that we do a lot for Ukraine. We spend a lot of effort and a lot of time, much more than the European countries are doing, and they should be helping you more than they are. Germany does almost nothing for you. All they do is talk, and I think it's something that you should really ask them about. When I was speaking to Angela Merkel, she talks Ukraine, but she doesn't do anything. A lot of the European countries are the same way. So I think it's something you want to look at, but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say that it's a reciprocal necessarily, because things are happening that are not good but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. President Zelensky, yes, you're absolutely right. Not only 100%, but actually 1,000%. And I can tell you the following. I did talk to Angela Merkel, and I did meet with her. I also met and talked with Macron, and I told them that they are not doing quite as much as they need to be doing on the issues with the sanctions. They are not enforcing the sanctions. They are not working as much as they should work for Ukraine. It turns out that even though logically the European Union should be our biggest partner, but technically the United States is a much bigger partner, but bigger partner than the European Union. And I'm very grateful to you for that, because the United States is doing quite a lot for Ukraine, much more than the European Union, especially when we are talking about the sanctions against the Russian Federation. I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next steps. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for the defense purposes. The president, I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people, the server. They say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have the Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, that whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller, an incompetent performance. But they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible. Yes, it is very important for me and everything that you just mentioned earlier. For me as a president, it is very important, and we are open for any future cooperation. We are ready to open a new page on cooperation and relations between the United States and Ukraine. For that purpose, I just recalled our ambassador from the United States, and he will be replaced by a very competent and very experienced ambassador who will work hard on making sure that our two nations are getting closer. I would also like and hope to see him having your trust and your confidence and your personal relations with you, so we can cooperate even more so. I will personally tell you that one of my assistants spoke with Mr. Giuliani just recently, and we are hoping very much that Mr. Giuliani will be able to travel to Ukraine, and we will meet once he comes to Ukraine. I just wanted to assure you once again that you have nobody but friends around us. I will make sure that I surround myself with the best and most experienced people. I also wanted to tell you that we are friends. We are great friends, and you, Mr. President, have friends in our country, so we can continue our strategic partnership. I also plan to surround myself with great people, and in addition to that, investigation. I guarantee, as the president of Ukraine, that all of the investigations will be done openly and candidly, that I can assure you. The president, good, because I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and he was shut down, and that's really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that. The way that they shut your very good prosecutor down and you had some very bad people involved. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York City, a great mayor, and I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with the attorney general. Rudy very much knows what's happening, and he is a very capable guy. If you could speak to him, that would be great. The former ambassador from the United States, the woman, was bad news, and the people she was dealing with in Ukraine were bad news. So I just want to let you know that. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he had stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. Zelensky, I wanted to tell you about the prosecutor. First of all, I understand and I'm knowledgeable about the situation. Since we have won the absolute majority in our parliament, the next prosecutor general will be 100% my person, my candidate, who will be approved by the parliament and will start as a new prosecutor in September. He or she will look into the situation, specifically to the company that you mentioned in this issue. The issue of the investigation of the case is actually the issue of making sure to restore the honesty. So we will take care of that and we'll work on the investigation of the case. On top of that, I would kindly ask you if you have any additional information that you can provide to us. It would be very helpful for the investigation to make sure that we administer justice in our country with regard to the ambassador to the United States from Ukraine. As far as I recall, her name was Ivanovich. It was great that you were the first one who told me that she was a bad ambassador, because I agree with you 100%. Her attitude towards me was far from the best, as she admired the previous president and she was on his side. She would not accept me as a new president well enough. The president, well, she's going to go through some things. I will have Mr. Giuliani give you a call, and I'm also going to have Attorney General Barr call, and we will get to the bottom of it. I'm sure you will figure it out. I heard the prosecutor was treated very badly, and he was a very fair prosecutor. So good luck with everything. Your economy is going to get better and better, I predict. You have a lot of assets. It's a great country. I have many Ukrainian friends. They're incredible people. Zelensky, I would like to tell you that I also have quite a few Ukrainian friends that live in the United States. Actually, last time I traveled to the United States, I stayed in New York near Central Park, and I stayed at the Trump Tower. I will talk to them, and I hope to see them again in the future. I also wanted to thank you for your invitation to visit the United States, specifically Washington, D.C. On the other hand, I also want to assure you that we will be very serious about the case and will work on the investigation. As to the economy, there is much potential for our two countries, and one of the issues that is very important for Ukraine is energy independence. I believe we can be very successful in cooperating on energy independence with the United States. We are already working on cooperation. We are buying American oil, but I am very hopeful for a future meeting. We will have more time and more opportunities to discuss these opportunities and get to know each other. I would like to thank you very much for your support. The president, good. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. I will tell Rudy and Attorney General Barr to call. Thank you. Whenever you would like to come to the White House, feel free to call. Give us a date, and we'll work that out. I look forward to seeing you. Zelensky, thank you very much. I would be very happy to come and would be happy to meet with you personally and get to know you better. I am looking forward to our meeting, and I also would like to invite you to visit Ukraine and come to the city of Kiev, which is a beautiful city. We have a beautiful country which would welcome you. On the other hand, I believe that on September 1st, we will be in Poland, and we can meet in Poland, hopefully. After that, it might be a very good idea for you to travel to Ukraine. We can either take my plane and go to Ukraine, or we can take your plane, which is probably much better than mine. The president. Okay, we can work that out. I look forward to seeing you in Washington and maybe in Poland, because I think we are going to be there at that time. Zelensky, thank you very much, Mr. President. The president, congratulations on a fantastic job you've done. The whole world was watching. I'm not sure it was so much of an upset, but congratulations. Zelensky, thank you, Mr. President. Bye-bye. And that's the end of the conversation. So anyway, just thought it was interesting that those of you that managed to stay through it, you at least heard what the exact memorandum was with the transcript, and again, not a verbatim. So anyway, that was the transcript of the call between Zelensky and President Trump. So those of you that are out there, you now can say that you at least heard it or read it, or maybe you just heard it by it's booked by one audiobook. Yeah, we had an audiobook. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me here on Wednesdays. We appreciate you doing that, and we're here every Wednesday from 9 to 10 o'clock talking about things that affect you in your daily lives. So please join us right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We are Martin County's Heritage Station.